Well, everyone, again, thanks for being on here this evening. I'm Bob, as you all know. We got Ryan and we have A-Jay Orr with us this evening. He's a cybersecurity expert, so I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. I'm going to share my screen first and just go through a little bit of just kind of a introduction presentation sort of thing. But really, we're just going to be talking here, the three of us, mostly A-Jay, right? Because he's the expert here this evening. But again, please feel free to ask questions and to jump in, and we will do our best to have a good discussion here and make it, again, just a conversation with AJ to learn more about cybersecurity and how to keep ourselves safe in an increasing digital world. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. So hopefully everybody can see this here. So everybody good to see this? Okay.
Yep, we got you.
All right. So again, do a quick introduction on AJ, an open discussion, and a question and answer session. We do have, we'll flip back to the presentation just for like a 10 steps to protect yourself. Just go over those quickly and then we'll wrap up here. We'll try to keep it at, 45 minutes to an hour, not only being respectful of everybody's time on here, but also of AJ's, of course. He's been, super generous with his time to be here with us this evening. So AJ, you can see him on screen here. This is his, nice picture that he sent us over here. The things I love about AJ, I've known him for a number of years and seen him grow his business over a period of time, but also him being a veteran, and being a huge supporter of veterans across the country and everything that he's done professionally, giving back to the community and to veterans is just such an amazing thing. But he is an expert in this field. He's a guy that I've known for a long time, family man. So excited to have him here. So AJ, thank you so much for being a part of this evening. Just if you would like to just give a quick little overview of yourself, and then we'll jump right into some discussion and Q&A with you.
Sure, I appreciate it, Bob, and thanks for the invite for having me out. As you said, my name is A-Jay Orr. I'm the founder and CEO of Simple Plan IT. We're a digital risk management firm. I used to say cybersecurity, but really it's really focusing on how do we help businesses manage their digital risk, because that's really what cybersecurity is. Started the company back in 2012, so we just hit 13 years in February. And we do a lot in the behavior-based analytics space. And so what that means is everything that happens within your business or within a business, there's information that leads up and shows us that a breach is happening and taking place. The problem is that most business leaders and most individuals don't have visibility into that, so they don't see it happening. And so that's the reason why the average network breach goes undetected for almost 6 months in the United States. And so our job, my team, what we do is our focus is how do we bring that time down from 6 months of undetection down to minutes and seconds. And so that's what we kind of focus on through different things. In addition to that, I'm very active in the cybersecurity space as well as the veteran support space, as Bob kind of alluded to. So I've got a nonprofit that helps veterans better reintegrate back into the community because transition out of military service is hard, and it shouldn't be as hard as what it is. And so the hat that I will always wear says I do it for the 22. It's because 22 veterans commit suicide every day. And so my job is to help to bring that number down by helping them to connect with opportunities and resources in their local communities in the state of Ohio that they didn't know existed. So that's kind of me as a snapshot. He had mentioned I've got kids. I've got 5 kids, all with the same wife from ages 20 to 2. So yeah, I'm a glutton for
Busy
punishment,
man.
busy man and glutton for punishment.
Well, we appreciate you being on here, AJ, and love everything that you're doing. So, from a, I guess to kick it off, then, like from a individual's perspective. So a lot of our
Mhm.
clients, they're just, husband and wife, or young professionals. They might have families, whatever it might be. But how can an individual best sort of starting point? I know this is going to be very generic, but we'll start here.
Yeah.
How can someone best protect themselves from all the cybersecurity threats out there?
I think the biggest thing is just being aware. It all starts with being cognizant that there's an actual threat out there. And I sent out a message earlier this week. Actually, it was yesterday on Wednesday. It went out. That I'll share it with your group as well. Um, one of the things that terrifies me as we live in this digital world is this thing called a data broker. There's so much of our information that exists out there online that we just don't know it exists. And, there's a website that I'll share with you guys. It's called fastpeoplesearch.com. And Ryan, if you want to type that in the chat and give it to him, it's just the words fastpeoplesearch.com. I would encourage you to take a look at that and at your convenience. Do a free search on yourself just so you can see how much information is out there that is free. Well, once again, this will be a free search that you do, and it's terrifying how much of our information is out there. Not only just about us, but you do a search on yourself there, you'll find your address, all the addresses that have been tied to you, phone numbers that have been associated with you, and not only that, but kids and relatives. And to me, that stuff should be illegal. And so the fact that all this information exists about us and that it's easily searchable and available online, that's what terrifies me. And so that's my biggest, if there's one takeaway that I would like for you guys to walk away with, it's understanding that the risk is real and that there's information out there about us that we just have to be cognizant of that and then just be careful of what it is that we do when we're online and whenever we're creating profiles and whenever we're signing up for reward cards. Everywhere that you put your information, it now resides in some database somewhere that is more than likely connected to the interwebs and somewhere that some organization is probably selling for marketing purposes and things of that nature. And so, like I tell everybody that I work with, and whenever I'm doing talks, I'm like, be cognizant of what you're doing. Like, if you're going to apply for a rewards card, do you really need that rewards card? Or is saving 20% on this purchase really that important for you to where you're willing to put your information out there on the line? And so just I'd say the first step is being aware of what all the risks are and how big of a digital footprint that we actually have would be the first start. And then from there, you start to work your way in on how do we start to, how do we start policing, the different apps that we're putting on our phones and what we're downloading and what we're looking at. Whenever you're searching on social media or, browsing the internet, being cognizant of what you're clicking on because threats come in all different shapes, sizes, and from so many different areas and avenues. I think that's the most dangerous thing right now is that, with AI and all the new technology, there's so many different ways that criminals are finding and coming up with to attack us that we have to constantly be vigilant and be cognizant of what it is that we're doing, how we're interacting, and where we're going, and things of that nature. So I would say those would be the first two things that I would highly recommend is just being aware of what it is that you're doing, the digital footprint that you're creating, and then just being cognizant of what it is that you're doing whenever you're interacting online, whether that's through social media or just regular browsing of the web and the links that you click on and things of that nature.
Yep. No, that's and I think sometimes we think through. I know I even do, right? Like it's like, oh well, it's not going to happen to me, or I don't have much information out there, but to see just how much is out there. So knowing that is kind of the first step. How then, or what are the protections that people can put in place, right? Whether it's from, like credit protection type things, how helpful are those? Or email encryption, password stuff like, and I know that there's a lot of different avenues we can take this, and I'm happy
Mhm.
to, or we're happy to take it whatever direction the client, anybody on this webinar wants to take it. So please ask questions as we go through this. But what steps, knowing that it's out there, like how can we start to protect ourselves from, hey, either getting this stuff out there worse or just controlling some of that data being just freely out there?
Getting all the data off. I mean, there are organizations out there that you can pay and that they'll go through and they'll get all your information scrubbed off of the 300, 400 plus sites that exist out there where your data is just actively being stored. I've come across a couple of different companies. There's one that's based out of New York that I kind of like, but it's not cheap. I mean, you're looking at 5 grand a year, and so it's like, does the average person
Wow.
want to invest $5,000 a year to have all that stuff done? That's up to them. So there's more cost-effective ways in which you can kind of mitigate some of these risks. To me, that's on the super extreme end of, hey, I want to pay somebody to make sure I'm scrubbed from the internet and none of my stuff is out there. If you're financially in a position where you can do that and you want to, virtually eliminate or bring your risk down to zero, as close to zero as possible, then those services are great. But for, for the average person out there, there's different things that you can do to also help to reduce that risk. And one of the actions that I tell people to do all the time is make sure that you're put a freeze on your credit report so that no new accounts can be opened unless you unfreeze those. And typically, there's no charge for that. So you go to the big three: TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax, and then just put a freeze on your credit, so no new accounts can be opened without you unfreezing your credit. And so that's one way that you can help to protect yourself. Another is, we use debit cards all the time. And I tell people all the time, do not use a debit card. Use a credit card. If you're going to buy something online and even in person now, I don't use my debit card for anything. And the reason for that, when you think about it, your debit card is direct access to your cash flow. A credit card is access to money that's available to you. So if my
Mhm.
credit card gets compromised and they go and max out that credit card, well, that was just money that was available to me. Credit card companies have very good systems in place to identify that fraud and everything else like that. And they'll shut down that card and then they go and pursue everything else like that. And then they'll reissue me another card and my credit limit is restored. You compromise my debit card and you take money out of my bank. Well, now that impedes my ability to pay bills. And at the same time, I now have to fight with the banks to prove that it wasn't me. And then for them to put that money back in my account is not a fast process. And so I tell people, if you don't have to use a debit card and you have the ability to use a credit card, pay it off every month or do whatever you got to do. But if you're going to do something online, shop with credit cards, not debit cards. I don't recommend using debit cards at all because, like I said, it's direct access to your cash flow if that gets compromised, and that affects my ability to pay bills versus a credit card, which is just money that is available to me. So those would be kind of some quick things as far as protecting your identity type of stuff. As we look at more, what are some more tactical things that I can do? Now you're talking about getting into password managers and, what are good passwords and, this new thing with more pass keys where, your thumbprint and your facial recognition and those types of things. We're always looking for better ways to identify because that's really what passwords are designed to do. It's a way to say, hey, prove that you are who you say you are. Give me the password that's associated with this account. And now, if I tell people don't use passwords, use passphrases. The longer the better. So instead of coming up with some super complex password. Use a lyric from a song. Use a verse that you like. Whatever it is. But I create pass phrases. I used to the one generic one I use whenever I'm telling people how to create these unique passwords for all the different accounts. You can have a base passphrase like I like to eat chili uh, at Facebook. I like to eat chili at Twitter or wherever you're signing into. So that's one way that you can kind of create some unique passwords that are long and complicated because it's the key when it comes to passwords, the longer the better. As long as it's at least 12 characters or longer is what you should try to shoot for. But me personally, I'm a big proponent of password managers because when you think
Okay.
about all of the different passwords that you have to memorize, that's the reason why businesses and individuals get in trouble is because we're human beings. There's so many different passwords that we can remember, and then we're told to change our password every 30 to every 90 to 180 days. Well, okay, and then not to repeat a password. I'm like, all right, well, how many different passwords and variations of a password can I create to where you start using the same password in other places? And that makes it even more dangerous because, think of all the different places where you've got login credentials from, your work stuff, your bank stuff, your all the different Amazon, Walmart, whatever different online shopping places or retails that you've got. Whenever I look at my just my own personal passwords. I mean, I've got over 100 passwords in my password managers that are just personal stuff, let alone my all the business accounts and everything else that I have associated. And so there's no way my human brain can remember all of those. And especially creating a unique password for every location. And so I'm a big proponent of password managers. One, because it allows me to create unique passwords for every location for every site that I don't have to remember. It can be super complex. So every single one of my passwords are 25 characters that are all random stuff so it's not a word or anything else like that you would be able to pronounce. So it's 25 random characters that I would have no ability to memorize or remember. And then in addition to that, um, the encryption that they have on their side when it comes to protection of those passwords is super high level. Like if I was to forget my password and how to log into the account, because now I just have one password that I have to remember. If I was to forget that password, like they give you three keys that they tell you to save offline in a secure place, because they don't even have access to my accounts and passwords. And so for me to get back into the account, like I think, knock on wood, I've never had to try it, but I've heard people, it's painful trying to get access to an account if you forget your password or you lose those three login keys that they give you, because their business is to keep your stuff secure. That
Yep.
is their business. And so not even they have access to your passwords and to get into your accounts or anything else like that. And so they've got the secure protections in place that make it a lot easier for me as an individual to be secure as I'm interacting in this digital world that we're in.
Gotcha, gotcha. So you definitely touched on that, and that was one of our questions from our clients even before the webinar here with
Mm.
password managers, like are they useful, which ones are best, and can't they be hacked? And it
Yeah.
sounds like they can't. I guess anything. I don't know. I'm assuming just about anything can be hacked. But if they don't even
Absolutely.
have access to that information themselves, right? If it's masked on their end, it's the all these layers of protection there. So do you have one or two that you really like that no no endorsements or anything here, of course,
Yeah.
right? But just some that you say, hey, these are well trusted, high quality password managers if somebody's interested in that.
Yeah, so the two that I've had personal experience with would be One Password and LastPass. Those are the two that I've had direct interaction with, which are both great. I like the fact of, the other thing is if I'm online, because what criminals have also gotten really good at is what they call spoofing a website. And so they look for common misspellings of popular websites. So let's say I want to go to Amazon.com and the popular misspelling is to accidentally hit a letter that's close to. So instead of hitting the O whenever I'm typing Amazon, I hit the zero. So criminals have been known to buy those domains, AMAZ0N, and then make it look like it's an Amazon website. And so you enter in your credentials, and then now they've been able to grab your login credentials that way. What these password managers do is that they will actually look and see. They're like, wait a minute, this isn't the site that you were trying to go to. Are you sure you want to enter in your credentials? So it's actually an extra layer to give you pause because we thought we typed it in right, but our fingers slipped and hit that zero. We got an Amazon page, so we think we're in the right spot. And so those are ways that criminals are oftentimes, trying to find different ways in which they can get into organizations and to compromise individuals. And so those password managers will help to be a deterrent in those type of situations as well.
Nice. Okay, I didn't even realize that it would do that, right? And that's a big thing that I know happens, right, with any sort of these phishing scams
Hmm.
or they're trying to replicate the website or replicate an email from the company or replicate a text message from the company and they want you to click some link or they want you to follow something. And that makes a
Yeah,
lot of sense that hey, if we have this password manager there as a layer of protection and we go to try to import our password into there, it's also going to recognize that this is incorrect. So that's sort of like a default protection for everybody there. So, and you touched
100%.
on, and AJ, you touched on pass keys quickly. So, what is the difference between a pass key and a password? And, maybe do you need, and the question here is, do you need different pass keys for different apps? Do you need, or different devices? Just Oh, it looks like can repeat the two password managers. Ryan, can you just type that in there so that people can
Yeah.
see it? But going back, AJ,
Yep.
passkeys and passwords, can you just talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, so passwords are what we're used to. It's what we've seen everywhere. It's kind of where we're at in the space. And so the question is, how do we evolve beyond that? So pass keys is kind of the next step from passwords. Then we're in this weird space of passwords and multi-factor authentication. And the whole idea, but with multi-factor authentication, is something you know and something you have. And so the something you know is your password. The something you have is your phone. And so you authenticate with your phone because the idea is a criminal may steal your password or they may be able to compromise your password, but chances are they don't have your device. And so that's what multi-factor authentication is designed to do. It's giving us two ways to ultimately verify who you are. You say that you're this person, you say that you're Bob. Okay, you've got Bob's username, you've got Bob's password. All right, I'm gonna ask one more thing. Verify with his phone because this is the phone that he set up in order to verify and says, hey, anytime that I log in, multi-factor, reach my phone, let me authenticate here as well to prove that I am who I say that I am. And so that is what multi-factor authentication is designed to do. The challenge is that criminals have found ways to get around that. And so multi-factor authentication is not bulletproof. And so they're looking for different ways. And this is where we get into all of the pass keys. And so it's still new, so it's not available everywhere. It's not something that you can use on all sites, but it is something that the industry is really starting to push. And it's with this whole thing, this basically using like your Google sign in. Google's really the big one that's pushing a lot of this. Google, Microsoft, the big corporations saying, hey, look, we've authenticated who you are, and because we've authenticated, we're now going to represent that you are who you say you are everywhere else that you go, so that you only have to do it one time. And so the pass keys are tied to kind of like your biometrics, whether it be your face recognition or your fingerprint and those types of things. And it's being able to follow you. So if you've logged into that device and you've authenticated who you are, then they use that authentication to verify any other site that you log into. So I think that's kind of the next evolution of things where you've authenticated into the hardware aspect, and then that then allows you to then log in and have access to all of your other things. I think that we're testing it out. It's still new technology from the sense of, it's less than 5 years old. And so we'll see what the market does with it and see what criminals try to do to bypass and circumvent it. That's unfortunately that's the world that we live in when it comes to technology. It's like, all right, we've got a great idea. We're going to put it out there. This is going to do, we think it's going to do this. And then we look for all the different ways or try to find all the different ways that criminals try to misuse it and abuse it. And then we try to figure out ways to circumvent it. So it's kind of that whole cat mouse thing. But
Yeah.
pass keys, I think is kind of, everybody's pushing to get to this. How do we get to a passwordless society where we don't have to remember all these passwords anymore? We use, kind of our biometrics in some sense as a way to authenticate to streamline the process because, to the point that I made earlier, there's only so many passwords that you can remember. And, to constantly be changing them and staying on top of all of them, is challenging. And so that's the reason why we're moving to this passwordless society and trying to figure out how we can maintain or increase security by doing these different things like passkeys.
Yeah. And I just know as a individual, right? Like sometimes I can get frustrated with the length of a password that they ask me to have, or hey, they need to send a
Complexity.
text to this. Yeah, they need to send a text to this phone, or you need the Google Authenticator app or something like that. But that's just these organizations doing their absolute best to make sure that they make it as difficult as possible for somebody to get in. So that's just something I like to remind people of on a regular basis. Like we're not, these companies aren't doing it necessarily to just be a pain in the butt and just to protect themselves. They're also doing it to protect you and each of us as consumers individually because there is so much out there. So, um,
100%.
that's really helpful. The conversations about password and all that stuff, like that's a good conversation. I want to switch gears just a little bit, just to
Mhm.
talk maybe a little bit about like viruses and different things like that, like different ways that you try to get attacked, right? And so we did have questions about like antivirus software or, clicking dangerous links, right? Like things like that that come through text messages, emails, different things like that. So how useful is antivirus and how are there ways that we can make sure we don't infect our devices with these different viruses that are out there?
So you touched on a bunch of things that I want to kind of unpack a little bit because, when we talk about all the different ways from email phishing to text message phishing, one of the things that I try to impart on everybody is that um, these big corporations will not reach out to you if they see and say that you've got a computer problem. Half of I say half, but I'd say a good majority of the socially engineered attacks are just tricking people into doing something because you don't know what you don't know. I've had a colleague of mine who ultimately ended up getting his PayPal account hacked. And he thought his PayPal account was hacked because he got an email, and it said, "Hey, we saw some suspicious behavior on your account. Call this number," and it had a link where he could click a button, and it had a phone number that he could call. Well, I've talked to him enough saying, "Hey, don't click any links in emails. Pick up the phone and call somebody." So he calls the number on the phone. Well, it was a criminal call center, and the guy said, "Thanks for calling PayPal, this, that, and the other." It represented like he was PayPal. And then they asked, "Hey, we're seeing some suspicious activity on your computer from our end. Let's connect. Let's connect to your computer, and then we'll get it cleaned up, and then we'll remove all the virus stuff that's compromising your account." And as soon as he allowed them to connect to the machine, he said he heard my voice in the back of his head saying something about this isn't right. So he hung up the phone and pulled the plug to the internet, which was the right thing to do because ultimately what had happened was it was a scammer, it was a criminal, and they were actually downloading malware. They actually put malware on his machine that allowed them to remotely connect into his machine without his knowledge. And so we were able to get it cleaned up. But so I say that as a cautionary tale that you know emails that you get from organizations, like, we have to be a little bit more, we have to be diligent, and if they ask to connect to your computer, um none of them are going to ask to do that. Microsoft is not going to reach out to you and say that, "Hey, there's something suspicious going on your computer." HP, Dell, none of them are going to reach out to you saying that they see suspicious stuff on your computer. And when you think about it, just from a logical standpoint, if they were monitoring your computer, that's an invasion of privacy. So, one, why are you monitoring my computer where you're seeing that some crazy activity on my machine? Like, why would you be seeing that anyway? And so, don't allow them to kind of pressure you into thinking that they're something that they're not. So that's one thing. The text messages, they're getting really good at that. They're getting really good with email phishing attacks as well because they all have Chat GPT. They've got AI now that makes very, I mean, before it used to be easy to spot a fake email because it was broken
Mhm.
English, the African prince from Nigeria that wants to give you millions of dollars. We're
Yep.
so far past that the scams that they're sending out, like prime example, I saw one yesterday that almost got my attention. And it came through because there's some stuff that we're doing from the nonprofit side that we're running up some new programs, and we had just filed for uh, a copyright on our logo and everything else like that. And so I got a letter, or I got an email from, it looked like an attorney from New York saying that they were suing us for copyright infringement. So I'm like, this sounds weird. Perfect timing to get me to pause. And so I go and I go pull up the website, and sure, it looks like a legal law firm. And so I kick it over to my team. I'm like, "Hey, is this something that we need to look at?" My cybersecurity guys started pulling it back and dissecting it, and they're like, "No, this is completely fake. It came from this location, and all of this is all bad." Now, I'm fortunate to where I have a team that I could give them to analyze that, but once again, if you just take a half a second pause to start thinking through these things and be like, wait a minute, why am I receiving this message? I tell people, especially around the holidays, FedEx and UPS get paid millions of dollars to be very good at what they do to make sure that they deliver packages to the right spot. They're not going to accidentally send you a package. Like, so if you got a text message saying, hey, this package is coming in, it's going to be here at this time, and you didn't order anything, don't click those links because it's not real. Because they get paid millions of dollars to make sure that they don't make those mistakes.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, I just we were setting up for this, and just yesterday I got this text message, right? And I don't know if we can read this or not, but okay, it's going to be too blind or too blurry, but an easy pass final reminder, right, that my toll road thing is going to get, charged. And I know that that's a common one right now.
Yeah.
And it like we get these all the time. And sometimes they're very easy, to your point, to notice. Like, I'm looking at this one and the number looks like it's a phone number from, Canada, or somewhere else, a different country, right?
Right.
But a lot of them, they're 216 area code, right? They're the proper area code. And it seems like, oh man, did I really forget to pay a toll? Or, did I forget to pay for my Norton antivirus? I've gotten that text message before, right? Like, so I
Right.
think the overarching message, for any of these links is, don't click on any link in an email or a text message
Yeah.
that comes from a company, right? Like, it just,
Mm.
if you need to go to, if PayPal, like, to use your example, and AJ, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you get something from PayPal that says, hey, XYZ is happening. Open up your computer, go to PayPal yourself, call the
100%.
actual support number for PayPal, and
Yep.
then ask
And
them,
verify.
say, hey, have I done this? And 100 times out of 100, they're going to say, no, that is a phishing attempt. It's a scam attempt. Don't do that. So, any other, like, general thoughts for that? The other one I heard is, if you get like a phone call come in, I don't even answer my phone if I don't recognize the number, first and foremost, right? Like, I just
Hmm.
if scammers aren't going to leave a voicemail. So, but if you do pick up the phone and they say, "Hey, I'm from PayPal and this, that, and the other thing," say, "Okay, great. I'll give you a call right back." Hang up the phone, call back the actual PayPal number, and then if it's accurate, if it's true, okay. If it's not, then you just saved yourself some time.
100%. And I would like to slight pivot
Yeah.
with all the AI stuff that's going on. AI voice and AI video is getting better and better. Voice is really scary these days because it's actually getting really, really good. And so we've actually seen scams where, we already know that scammers can make calls look like they can come from any number. And so it's nothing to make a call look like it's coming from my cell phone number. And, what if they were to call my mom? I've got plenty of video out there online to where you got enough of a sampling where you can copy my voice. Now they call my mom and they use this voice modulating AI and they type this script using Chat GPT to make it sound like it's real and legit. And then they're feeding it into the system and saying, "Mom, I'm having hard times, or I'm in trouble. I need you to wire some money. It's an emergency, and it looks like it came from my number. It sounds like me on the other line. My mom is going to probably execute that wire transfer just to help me out." And so what I encourage and advise people, and this is something that I actually learned from an FBI agent whenever I was talking on a panel with him last year. He said, have family group passwords so that you can actually authenticate and verify who you are amongst your families. So that'll help to prevent falling for a scam where they try to weaponize your family against you. And so,
Mm.
kind of like, we all have, growing up, I'm a product of the 80s, but, we had family fire plans and hey, everybody's going to meet here. Well, now you have family passcodes that, hey, just to make sure that you are, my child or you are who you say you are, what's the family password? And so you can use those passwords in order to authenticate so that you don't get duped. And it's just something that you and your family and only your family knows. And so that's another great way to kind of shield yourself against some of these attacks and prevent some nasty things from happening.
Yeah, that's really good. And even I think to like we have, Simply Safe just monitoring like our house and stuff. And
Mhm.
we had to have a specific password so that if something happened and they called and, I'm like, yeah, hey, everything's fine. And they're like, well, you got to give me the password still to make sure that it's fine. So something similar to that, I guess,
Yep,
just stealing it from, overall protection. So,
100%.
yeah, so super helpful. And again, if anybody has any questions or anything they'd like us to kind of talk about here, because we're getting up, about 10 or 15 more minutes that, we're going to have AJ with us here this evening. So if anybody has questions, please ask. But we did have another question from a client just about, like routers and Wi-Fi and these things. Like, when you're in your home router, how safe is it? Do you need to protect those things? Public Wi-Fi, how safe is that? Should you not connect to those types of things? He's shaking his head, right? So, just share with us a little bit about maybe just accessing the internet in general and ways we can protect ourselves both at home and while we're out and, in public.
So let's start with the home Wi-Fi's. Yes, you should. There are things that you can do to protect yourself with those things. The first thing that you should do is change the admin credentials, because every box has a default that you can search online, any box, and it's some sort of a admin, or the IP address is 192.168.1.1, whatever it is, but it's all public knowledge and it's the defaults out there that you can just search. So you can find your router right now, find the model number, and go to Google and say default admin for this box, and it'll pop up and show you what those default admins are. So if you don't change those, then a criminal could essentially compromise that network and then create a backdoor into that system. When it comes to your home networks, and especially if you're the type that has a lot of devices connected to their internet, and when I say devices, think about all the different things, smart light bulbs, your smart TVs, they've got smart everything now, smart fans, smart
Refrigerator.
everything is technology based and can connect to the internet. And so I am a big proponent of separating all of my devices on a separate Wi-Fi network, so that if that device gets compromised and it only accesses my other devices, it doesn't access the computers or the phones, because those run on a separate network inside my house. And so anything that I can do to kind of separate off and minimize damage and impact, because unfortunately, if it touches the internet, it's a point of vulnerability. And this is one of the things that I really impress upon business owners is that, and I use two examples. A few years ago, there was a casino that got hacked through a smart fish tank. Um, I didn't realize how expensive those fish tanks are in Vegas with those saltwater fish. Like, it's super expensive. And so there was a device that sat on the network that allowed them to monitor the pH and temperature of those fish tanks and regulate that. Well, there was a vulnerability in it. A criminal was able to exploit that, get onto the network, and steal the casinos all their high roller information. So that happened a
Wow.
few years ago. And then there was a university that got hacked through their smart vending machines and light bulbs. And so it just goes to show that if it touches the network, which touches the internet, it can be a point of vulnerability. And so when we think about our homes, it's no different,
Hmm.
because these attacks happen remotely. Because uh, 90% or the vast majority of cyber attacks are automated attacks. Criminals are writing scripts that are just scanning the internet looking for, hey, do you have this device? Well, if you've got this device, then this is a known exploit. See if this is exploitable. Yep, they didn't patch this, or this is an open vulnerability, and then they drop a little pin so that the criminal can then come back in and then they execute the
Hmm.
attack. So that's kind of really how the vast majority of cyber attacks happen. They're not hackers punching at a keyboard looking to see, who they can hack, and they're targeting people. No, a lot of this stuff is automated now to where they're just crimes of opportunity. I kind of draw the conclusion, or compare it to if you talk to a police officer and they talk about car break-ins. Most car break-ins aren't smashing windows and breaking into cars. It's popping the handle and there was a door that was unlocked. They get in, take whatever they can, and then they get out. Cyber attacks are very similar to that. It's there's open vulnerabilities that we didn't know existed. They came in, they got whatever they wanted, and then depending upon the size of the opportunity, they stick around. They try to use your contacts to launch more attacks. They try to use your technology resources to do crypto mining or something along those lines. And then we see the ransomwares and everything else like that. But
Yep.
that's kind of the psychology around cyber attacks. But when it comes back to your going back to your networks, change your default admin passwords for all of your routers. If you have the ability, once again, you can Google all of this stuff. This is and there's YouTube videos that will walk you through how to do all of these things. So I say all that just to say you don't have to go and hire a professional to do all of these things because these are minor things that you can watch a tutorial video that will walk you through on how to make these simple adjustments, which will make a ton of difference in the long run.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And we did have a question come in just asking about explaining the default admin on a Wi-Fi router again. And I believe what you're referring to is just kind of when you initially set it up, there's like a little QR code or something on the bottom of
Hmm.
the routers, right, that you scan, and you have to have kind of an admin and a password to get in the first time, and that's
Hmm.
when you set up your Wi-Fi, right?
Your Wi-Fi
And to your
network.
point, it's just, hey, go in there, log into it and just change both the username and the password,
At
both
least the
one or the
password.
other, just the
At least change the
password.
at least change the
Yeah.
password. Yeah, if you don't mind
Okay.
change I mean, you can leave it as admin, that's fine, as long as you change that password because the password is just out there readily available for anybody that scans it and looks for that vulnerability.
Gotcha.
And to
Yep. That's
piggyback on that too, the other thing you can do that'll definitely help is just make sure you're keeping the firmware updated on those things because they'll patch all those exploits and stuff
That
that A-Jay pointed out.
that too. Sometimes that's a little bit harder because you got to remember to check those things.
Yeah.
But at least if you're at least if you're changing your defaults, that'll help to mitigate a lot of the risk. But the other part, yeah, and that's the sad thing. Unfortunately, the world that we live in is that technology is constantly evolving. There's new vulnerabilities like it's tough to stay on top of. Like literally, that is my business, and I can't do it. I mean, thank
Yep.
God I have a team that's what they do because it makes my head spin. Like there's never something new that's not coming up. Like there's always something new. Um, I'll be honest, AI terrifies the living hell out of me. It really, really does because the speed at which things are now progressing has gotten exponentially faster. And so with AI, it's only going to continue to get faster. Technology is getting faster. It's getting better. This whole idea of robotics and everything else like that is just kind of creepy. This augmented reality. I saw something where Harvard students have taken the Meta glasses and they can now do facial recognition and scan, and then they can actually get all the information on you scraped from the web using AI delivered to their phone as they're walking around a campus. Like
wow.
it's just terrifying how much information is available, how quickly people are getting access to it. And I don't see how we slow it down. And so it's just a matter of how do I then minimize my exposure point? And I think that's really kind of the basis of what I wanted to kind of really convey here tonight was one, express that the threat is real. But then two, how can we logically, with some practical things, start to minimize our exposure while also increasing our awareness to make sure that we're not creating more vulnerabilities within ourselves unknowingly because we're just downloading all the different apps. And we're mindlessly clicking on things. Like if we can just slow down half a beat and be like, wait a minute, why do we need access to this? Do I need to give them access to all the things in which they're asking for? Do I need to really sign up for this? Where's all my information going? If we can just start to slow down just a half a beat before we start doing things and clicking on things, that'll make the world of difference when it comes to making yourself a smaller target to actually hit.
That's a great way to kind of bring it all together there, AJ. And I know that we set aside 45 minutes for this evening. We're at the time here, so I want to be really mindful of your time and start to kind of wrap things up here. So, AJ, I think that just one. I guess I'll ask a really quick question before we flip over to kind of just 10 things that we can kind of protect. But for antivirus softwares, yes or no, are you a supporter or proponent of antivirus softwares on your computer, or what is the thought there?
So none of them are perfect. I no longer, well, because I use a different product. I use a commercial grade product, which is called Endpoint Detection and Response. It does behavior based stuff, but that's only because I run a company that uses this stuff. If I was just using like I set my parents up at home, their Windows machine, the Windows Defender is going to do just as good a job as a McAfee or a Symantec, because they all have gaps. And so the built-in products typically are going to give you as good of protection as the other ones are as well. None of them are bulletproof, but whenever I look at kind of their detection rate and how and what their success rate are, they're all in that same margin for error. And so if that would be the case, if I'm not, if Symantec or McAfee isn't, head and shoulders above what's coming in on the Microsoft devices, if it's all within the same margins, then why am I going to pay a dime for something that's not going to give me anything better? That's always been my thought process. But so yeah, the built-in antivirus, every new Windows machine has built-in antivirus on it. It's called Microsoft Defender. It's going to monitor your things. Just make sure that kind of one of the things that Ryan alluded to as far as doing firmware updates, make sure you're doing your security, your Microsoft updates. If you see that little orange bubble down at the bottom, click it before it becomes red and just do your updates. Once again, we talk about minimizing your exposure points. That will minimize your exposure points because a lot of people don't realize. So Microsoft pushes out updates the second Tuesday of every month. This past month, the update that they rolled out plugged 57 security vulnerabilities.
Hmm.
57. So it's important to do those things because they found 57 flaws in their operating system that criminals were actively exploiting. And just by taking them the few minutes to do the update, now secures you and protects you from those 57 vulnerabilities that you didn't even know existed. So I tell people, if you see the little orange bubble at the bottom, click it and just find time to set aside 5 minutes to do the update. It'll save you so much headache in the long run.
Wow. And I'm a Mac user, and Ryan always makes fun of me for being a Mac user, but I do the same thing whenever we get our Apple updates, right? Just try to get it
Just
through there. As
just
soon as
do
they
it.
come through,
It'll
get it
save you
done.
so much headache. It'll save you so much
Yep.
headache. It's the little
Yep.
things. It's the little things.
Yep. So let me see here. We put this together, and this was, just a quick little 10 steps to protect yourself. And AJ, we don't have to, go in deep into each and every one of these, but I think we talked a lot about these. But if there's any you wanted to touch on further, but I think the big thing that AJ, you started with was just be discreet, aware, and organized. Just understanding it's out there and understanding that there is this risk. And the more that you know, the better you can protect yourselves. We just talked about maintaining updates, antivirus, firewalls, all of those things. Strong and diverse passwords, multi-factor authentication, and using a password manager. One on here is switch to paperless, and a lot of people may think that it's more safe to be, one or the other. What are your thoughts with paperless versus getting everything emailed? Where do you stand on that one there?
The only reason I like paperless is because in a with a digital copy, I can have access to it wherever I'm at. So that's my reason for going digital and going paperless. But truthfully, from a security standpoint, that's really it's more of a preference. If you prefer to have the hard copy of things, there's nothing wrong with that. Just make sure that you have good practices when it comes to how do I dispose of that. Make sure everybody nowadays has shredders. Hey, if it's got anything remotely sensitive on it, shred it.
Yep.
Don't put it openly in the trash can. But other than that, To me, paperless is a personal preference. For me, I like digital because I can access it from wherever I'm at. But for those that like the feel of paper and the comfort of that, by all means, have it paper. Just make sure that you've got, if you're disposing of it, that you dispose of it properly.
Yep. Yeah. And that's perfect, kind of putting 6 and 7 together there with scrutinizing the things coming through, shredding those sensitive documents. I think number 8, opting out of telemarketing and report spam email, right? Like doing these things, it goes right up with number 1, being discreet, aware, and organized. Um, and
Spam
then,
emails. One quick thing when it comes to spam
yeah.
emails, people have asked me how should I interact with those, or if I see a phishing attack, what do I do with those? Just delete it. Don't engage with it. I mean, you can mark it as spam, so it blocks it in your email, so it won't come through. But just delete it. There's nothing else to do. I tell people not to opt out of the email threads because we've seen where criminals have weaponized that opt out button because you can't
Mm,
always see where it's taking you. And so rather than, I don't need to opt out of your list, I just need to block you and delete you so that you're not coming into my inbox anymore. And that you
mm.
100% control. So just delete and mark it as spam and so that it blocks coming into your inbox. Don't worry about opting out of their list because 9 times out of 10, they're going to add you to additional lists once you click that button because now you've verified that this is a real account that somebody's monitoring. And so then it'll just
Uh,
put you on a bunch of other spam accounts anyway. So the easiest way to engage is to not engage at all. Just delete it and mark it as spam, and so it doesn't come into your inbox and just keep moving forward.
Interesting. That's some really good insight there, AJ. Scanning and saving your wall contents. I think this, of course, applies to kind of physical stuff there, right? Just
Mhm.
being safe in the physical world. But number 10, the big one, just recognize when you're being targeted. And again, I think this goes back to just being mindful of every message, call that we get, right? Like from text messages to emails to, phone calls, whatever it may be, being mindful of these and recognize when you're being targeted and call somebody, right? Like one thing, and I'll say this kind of from my position as a financial advisor for any of our clients, right? Like if you ever feel like there's something happening that doesn't feel right, call us or call somebody you trust, right? And just verify if what's happening is correct. I did have a client who made it all the way to the bank. He was about to withdraw money out and deposit it into a different ATM. And he finally called me and I was like, absolutely not. Do not do this. It is a scam, right? Like, and so, just to the extent that you feel like something is even a little bit off, just call somebody that you trust and make sure that you get a second pair of eyes on somebody that you care about to get out there and to help you with that. So, anything else to add, AJ, as we wrap it up here this evening?
Now I see one more question in the Q&A.
Oh, okay.
Dean asking about the check if you're not a robot. We haven't seen those be weaponized, and so those are usually legit. Usually it's like a Cloudflare. I'm trying to think of some of the other password verification systems, but we haven't seen any of those be weaponized, and so those are usually typically legit in those cases.
Okay. Great. Awesome. Well, thank you for those that asked questions. Thank you for that. But beyond that, AJ, thank you so much for the time
Yeah,
here this evening. I think it was
thanks for
really
having me out.
helpful, not only for the clients and the folks that attended here, but honestly for me as well, right? Like me learning some things that not only I can carry out personally, but also can share with the folks that we're here to work with. So again, A-Jay Orr here, everybody. It was super great to have him on. Appreciate the time. It was good to see you, my man. You're looking
You
good.
too, bud. You too.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And, hopefully we'll catch up again soon, but we'll wrap it up for this evening. Again, we'll record this and send this out. But if you need anything else, as everybody knows, just feel free to reach out to me, Ryan, or the team here. And AJ, thanks again for the time this evening.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me out.
Yep,
Thanks,
take
AJ.
care.
Take care.